Central County District School Board. This is, like most of you know, the second meeting in the secondary attendance area review for Barrie Secondary School. I'm joined up here at the front by Keuken, who's keeping notes and trying to record the goings on in this meeting. Keuken, manager of planning. Nick's a planner in our department as well. I'd like to recognize we have a number of trustees amongst us right now and administrators from the schools involved. On my left, Culminates. Wayne is with Agile Talk. I'm not going to try to remember all the different areas that are covered by each person. Jennifer Cameron, Kathleen Aiken, Krista May. Am I missing anybody else? That's it. And from the schools, I'll start in the second row, Dana Barakauskas, principal here at Barrie North. In the front row, Mark Keating from Barrie Central, vice principal. Don Stevens from Innisdale. Greg Brucker from Barrie Central and Sharon Beeler from Barrie Central. So we're going to start off with the review background. Andrew's going to go through the slideshow. As our habit with this, we try to go through this. We'll answer questions at the end, and we'll stay until as many questions are answered as possible, and then we'll move on from there. From here tonight, we're moving forward towards a report to trustees in the Business and Facilities Committee meeting going into next March, this coming March 4th, and then following that, depending what the response of trustees is to that report, we'll be coming forward to the board at the end of March to move forward with the recommendations that are presented at that time. So I'll turn it over to Andrew if you can go through this for you.
Thanks, John. A lot of familiar faces from the last meeting and from previous meetings from years ago that I see. So for some of you that were at the last meeting, this will be a little bit repetitive. There's some new information. But for the benefit of the people that weren't there last time, or new trustees, we'll go through it in depth. So bear with me for 15 minutes or so. If you have comments, you can email any of us up there. There's comment sheets. You can leave them with us on the back of your agenda, or leave them with your school principal. So, with the background and why we're here, in 2010 there was a pupil accommodation review initiated for all the 5 secondary schools due to shifting enrollment and importantly as well the facility condition. Barrie Central at that time. Certainly be in a different context, that's for sure. Start French sooner at Bear Creek, and then finally special consideration to the program, so again, kind of French, part of height, individual. So that's a quick summary of what we've been hearing, and happy to answer questions that you had tonight, I'm sure. The next steps and timeline. So we're going to consider the comments again tonight, and then bring a report forward to the Business and Facilities Committee on March 4th, and depending on what the results are from that meeting, we'll go to the board for decision at the end of March. So with that, so John back and
No, we were, just as to add to what Andrew was talking about, the appropriation, the change in the timelines certainly is helpful for us, and that's something we've said when people have asked about the goal of opening the new school in September 2016. It's one that, by owning the land earlier, then we're able to work with the City of Barrie on our site plan approval and our building permit, and then we'll be in a better position. And that was a question we had before. Why don't you just say it's not going to be open on time? Well, we can still strive for it. Once we know it's not going to be there, we will make that announcement. As I said in a previous meeting, we did the same thing in Aurelia. We had an opening date of September 2016, and we're opening there in February of 2017. So, sorry, 2015, 2016. So it's going to be open after the semester. So that's something that we will do as we move along. But the timelines are certainly better once we own the property, and that makes a big difference for us going forward. There's the term ownership and then possession, and then there's also the work with the city. And we're certainly happy to look back that we're moving along with the city in that regard, and hopefully we'll make some progress on it. So We'll open the floor to questions, and try anything afterwards. We'll be around. Yes?
I'm curious, and that's the first I've heard of the 23 acres, because it was 20 acres, and then I spoke to you at a meeting, and you told me it would be 16 acres in order to get it ready for 2016, and now it's 23 acres. So can you clarify that? Is that a typo? Like, I know he said there's 3 acres for parking, but
no, it's
what's
3
the story?
acres. Sorry, 3 acres is for the road. We'd originally asked for 20 acres, and we did report to our board of trustees that we thought we had a deal with the developers that they were to remove all their objections. And so we said we would go down to 15.7 acres as long as they removed their objections and not having to go to the hearing of necessity. Well, they reneged on that and then started to make conditions on where the building would be located, the size of the building, and other things. Like they wanted to have the building right on Mapleview, when we've already had the architect and presented designs to the Board of Trustees to have it set back so that our field would be on Mapleview, the corner of Mapleview and Prince William. And those drawings have been out there. But what happened was that they changed their minds on that deal and started to put these conditions on it. So we said, we'll go back to 20 acres. And in the end, they pulled back on any conditions, and now the hearing of necessity isn't taking place anyway. So we're going ahead with our 20-acre property with the plans that we had originally, and then that's why it's full steam ahead. So that's good news as far as site acquisition, without a doubt. But it was originally 20, but the road allowance is one that we're able to do as well. And we work with the City of Barrie so that it's basically a construction road, but we have to build it to the standard of the city as they want it, so it's not a reconstruction afterwards. And then we had to do this in Nantar Shores when that school was being built. We also had to build a road to Admiral Collingwood, an elementary school in Collingwood. So we're able to acquire that property from the people who own it right now, and that's where it's 20 plus 3. So it's back to the original 20 acres we wanted.
So I can add that if you're just to put it, show what we're talking about here. This is where the school site is that we're looking at. This is Prince William Way. What we're talking about is the construction portion of Prince William Way that would border our site. So that's where our main access point will be off of that road. We tend to not want to have entrance access stuff roads that we arterials.
Yeah.
The summary of proposed transfers for September 2016, you have a small portion of the students going to Eastview, but on the impact for the family school, is that going to be like there's no portion of Hillcrest at Eastview, so is that going to be a continuous flow or is that a one-time?
The 30 students are from the French program only.
Right, but there's no, like, nothing at Eastview for those extended French students that are currently at the press, only the ones.
So
is it only going to happen once?
It's a good point, and what we would be doing under Eastview is adding Hillcrest and saying a certain percentage of its rating population.
And we have our dedicated feeder schools as well. And this actually, admittedly, this space is not only the regular track students it's a little bit different at elementary. Extended French in secondary at this time is substantial. It's not long.
So one of the key things along the line of extended French is also, as the French immersion moves into high school, there's a greater requirement of the number of courses that will take place too. So I believe now it's 7, and then there's a requirement of French immersion of additional courses. So in that case, one of the things we're looking at, we have to make sure the French immersion programs are feeding in schools that are substantial enough to offer the program. Because once you start a French immersion program, it's the same as the extended French committee to making sure that it follows all those through.
And once we got actually, yes, when we incorporate those changes, actually, at some point in time, Oakley Park, once it takes it in, that would be in Eastview too. Because right now it only has French immersion in grades 1 and 2. It doesn't have the ESL program. But in 7 years, when that grade 8 cohort moves into secondary school, that would also be under this scenario.
build a new school have a French version? You have warrant the new school warrant?
No, at this time, again, this is regular track, and if you're aware or not, last night we brought a report forward too, as well to turn the warranty into a single track school. So
that whole work would go to Innisdale. So it's not going to be.
But at this point, that is my work.
Lori, I'm so confused about that. If we're not going to be single track French school, is the extended French program going to New Barrie Secondary School or Innisdale? Right now, you've got 100% of the French kids who are the only ones that weren't, there aren't any going to be any English.
Yeah,
That's wrong then?
that would be gone, yes.
Okay.
As it stands now, we don't, that would be under the big English track space that we don't have. That's not
No,
right,
that doesn't exist. That doesn't.
Well, it depends on what happens with the single trackers.
Oh, that's not done?
No.
Okay.
It was brought to the committee last night, so that would be fine for what this month. So what was proposed there is that these students, the English track students, actually are being proposed to be transferred to the new school. So those students will be accounted for this.
One of the key things we do when we have to do these is we can't assume a decision of the Board of Trustees.
Yeah, I thought that was a done deal. I didn't know it was still in the works.
No, and that was an important element for the plans here to go through the elementary review first and then be able to go to the secondary review with some more certainty. Yes?
I still don't understand why we're not keeping Central open until we have the ownership of the South End land and some construction and a completion date nailed down, why we are moving kids prior to that, and why we are moving kids here to North when you don't have your consolidation money yet, and when you haven't started construction here yet. There will be a delay. You're going to be transferring kids into this school in a construction zone, which is disruptive and more affordable. Why not wait until your money for consolidation money is in, construction is complete here? Why not wait for the South End school to be open before we close Central and move the kids?
That question was raised last time, and we took that as input, and this is an attendance area review for the plans for after the closure of Barrie Central. There were 2 notices of motion at business and facilities last night that I think address both of those, because it says keep Barrie Central open until the one motion was that, I'm paraphrasing, not the exact wording, but one was to keep Barrie Central open until the South Barrie School was open.
So my concern is, though, we have said that once, and we're saying it all again, but it's up to you to present to the trustees what you want to happen. And we're saying as a group, we don't want Central closed until those other 2 sites are complete. But you still are going to go to the trustees, I assume, with the idea that we're still sticking with the June 2016 closure of Central.
And that's what our plan is until we're proven otherwise.
So what's the purpose of the attendance area review if we're saying as a group that isn't what we want, but you're still presenting to the trustees that's what our plan is? What is the purpose of this?
Consultation and input.
So where are you
It's
taking
not,
these
it's not a
from?
vote by this group, because this is not the whole group of people that are involved. Obviously, there are lots of other families involved.
Right.
So we were taking input, and we take that, and we take it to heart, and we will, as we go towards the report, we will include them. And I think that we recognize the trustees who are in the audience tonight, and they're hearing this conversation. And that's what is intended through this sort of process.
Yeah, the main point of this is to try to determine where these students are going to eventually go. I mean, timing is of course an issue, part of it, but as John said, those issues that we probably been addressed motions forward. Okay. Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that a lot of discussion has gone on previous to tonight, and that there has been a lot of things out there. I think as a whole, after, in the year of September 2016. So it's very frustrating as a parent to have a young person who's trying to get an education in a system where I feel like the student or the families are going to go first, where political manipulation and all of the things that are going on is being put forward for first in front of our students. It's very difficult to sit here as a parent and hear your response to that very respectful, formative question when it's a parking board voice, which it's very difficult to explain to my young people why they're going to be stuck in portable. And so there's lots of questions on here that we as parents and taxpayers are willing to give answers to, and not to have answers like that that we're listening, because we don't really feel like we're listening. And I don't think that's an unfair thing to say. If you're moving my child into a school that's dealt with the past, have you addressed, have you told us what you're doing both number of courses? Are you able to completely stand there tonight and tell me that my young person will be able to access her French learner, her extended credits we have invested in since grade 1 to 5, and show Miss Barrie and Monica and Barrie Central because of what their system offers? Are you able to stand there and guarantee that my child will have adequate facilities, adequate classes, a range of courses, and be able to graduate with first experience? Or is my young student going to get lost in your reorganization? And so you can stand there and tell us we're dealing with it, we're listening to it, we're listening to it, but we want to hear some answers. I want to hear how you're going to address that. I want to hear how you're going to address 200% in a school or not having loans. These are very important things to our students and important to us as parents. And it's hard to buy into the plans and listen to the plans when you're not addressing them. So my question is, could we have some specific answers? How are you to address all these changes if you close the school and you don't reach them?
That is something that we're following, what the recommendations or the conclusions of the ARC were, and that's what we're following along. The details as to the individual movement of students will be certainly worked out. This is we have to be in a position to be able to give people enough information by the end of March this year, going towards the following September. That's what our policy says. We've heard the questions about washroom capacities. We have had that answered from the City of Barrie. They believe that they have said that we're within our washroom capacity. Other people would say differently. We have to work with the City of Barrie to see whether we're able to put a certain number of portals on the property. The history has been that, yes, those numbers have been accommodated before. It depends on the timing, and the timing of the school is one that is an important aspect, but we aren't guaranteed the timing of the school, because we can't say we're not going to make these moves, and then the school is open and sitting and waiting, and it could be until we get to the point where we know that we aren't going to reach that September 2016 opening. And that's something, as I said, in the City of Aurelia, the difference was we already have those students in one place. In this case, it is a double move. It is a double move from one school to two existing schools, and then from the other school, Innisdale, to the new school. But it's only one move for them. And what we're trying to position is, when you ask about extended French, the ability to do programming in a larger school is much greater. Are they going to be able to get the requirements out there for the EFSL certificate? Yes. I would argue that historically it's easier in a larger school than it is to get that requirement than it is in a smaller school.
So we will guarantee that will be...
We guarantee the pathways for students to get towards graduation. There are other things that happen along the way that somebody may go on exchange. Somebody may take, for example, at Innisdale, the Global Perspectives course, that may mean they'll stay another semester in school. What we endeavor to guarantee in every case is that they have their pathway in front of them and they're able to get the courses they are required. The history of Barrie Central, after being the superintendent there and being in graduations, is a A lot of the extended French students stayed an extra semester or two in order to take advantage of the programming that was there, whether it was Latin or whether it's Italian, those aspects. That's what's taken place in the past. So when you ask for guarantees, can I guarantee that a student is going to be done in 4 years? No, I can't. I can guarantee that the pathway is there for them to graduate, and that's what the availability of courses are. And as I said, moving towards Innisdale, the range of courses is greater, just because of the size of the school. That's the nature of programming in this day and age. You used to hear about people who would be in schools of 300 and they'd be able to do that. That's not what we find now. We can't guarantee the same pathway. We know, for example, in Keuken, we can't offer a physics course every year so a student can have a pathway including physics simply because of the size of the school, which is around 400. That's where the differentiation takes place. And if you're an extended French student, it doesn't necessarily mean you're not a science student. So you have to make sure those science pathways are available, even though you're really good at the extended French, because they have to do 7 courses to get their certificate. That's what we can guarantee that you're going to be able to get those 7 all-for-all safe courses, whether it's geography in grade 9 or histoire in grade 10. Those are the ones we make sure they have. But what we know is extended French students, Barrie Central is the anomaly for us. They're the ones that they don't always stay in the program. At Barrie Central they have. And a lot of other places, as I say, other things factor in. They decide that they're not going to be an extended French student because they may think their grades are more important in a different area. So we guarantee the path.
And you guarantee facilities and activities. And it's not just French is personal to me, but it's also hard to hear that my child will be affordable for 2 years the last year of high school when a school is in empty.
Well, and all I can say is that it doesn't necessarily mean you're in a portable. You may have a class in a portable. That happens lots of places. If you're going to be taking a technology course, you're not going to be taking it in a portable. So, I mean, that's the differentiation at secondary school. You may have a class like an English out of a portable, and we have a lot of portables in Innisdale already. We recognize that. That's the pressure that's developed in new schools. But Bear Creek was like that before. And Central, I'm told anyway, in historical times anyway, had lots of portables before and was able to provide programs. So what schools do, and the administrators are better at it than better to speak to it, they do multiple lunches. That's what takes place in some locations. They also do, and we've never done them here, they do split shifts. We haven't done those, but other jurisdictions have done that. Brampton, they do that now when they're looking for a new school. We prefer not to. We prefer to keep them in one school so they have a sense of community, especially if they're moving into a school like Brampton.
I work in a board that this is in this county, and I have seen firsthand the effects of students not being there because the school's bigger. There's only a certain number of spaces available in the grade 9 science. Obviously, the ones that they have to get things go way around, but with so much competition to get some of the ones they want to do, it's difficult. And I think we could talk about all of the little details and details. The fact is, it goes back to what she was saying, that it's really a big pill to swallow when we're shuffling everybody around in the school. As parents, what we want to hear is that if the contingency plan, like you said, that motion was put forward. So what I heard you say from that is Barrie Central might not close until 2016 if the other things don't come through.
That was the notice of motion that was put on the table last night.
Okay. So that is a possibility.
That's a discussion item for the trustees to carry forward.
Oh, we have no answer.
The notice of motion was tabled last night. It goes to business and facilities in March, which is March 4th, for discussion at that time. That's what the procedure is through our government. Okay?
Thank you, John. I was wondering if maybe you could talk a bit about alternatives. Because one of the things that I've been hearing from people for a very long time is that not everyone's totally honed in on the belief that the school will be available and open in 2016. Yet all the data and all the stats and all of the other documentation here tonight is focused on 2016. So it's kind of like the only way. And I think with the things you're bringing into the picture, you've got this new concept of a one-track school Monica, which hasn't been properly detailed here in these statistics, and is in fact going to be at that same business and facility, right? You've got issues around now you're moving to grade 9s. What happens if the Barrie North doesn't get planned? There's many different alternative scenarios, and I think that would be really good and very helpful to the public, maybe the trustees as a whole, to see different scenarios, not just the single scenario. And I understand you truly believe that it will be ready in 2016, but the mayor of the city is absolutely certain it won't be. And it would be very disconcerting to send off a few hundred kids into a new school under construction just to make a point, you know, that we made 2016. So is it possible you could create new scenarios for people to look at and stats for people to compare?
I believe that I can't speak to what's going to be the discussion of the trustees at the March meeting. I have to go back though. The Warnico one is not coming forward at the same time. It is coming forward in 3 weeks at the next.
Business facility.
No, at the next board meeting for ratification. So that may change that. And by next March 4th, it may very well be that those are updated to show those differences. As far as options, that's something we always explore. Anybody who has been part of an ARC, we always throw the options out there. Whenever I've chaired an ARC, we said, what are the different options in front of us to explore? That's something that may come up. We are striving for that date. And with all due respect, I know that the mayor has said things, but he also said things like 2020, which we disagree with completely. So I have to say, we can't always have the certainty that people want. We can certainly explore options, but we're also in the context right now of moving ahead with what we can do, and that is striving to reach our date. If we don't, and we don't know what our date is, then we will, as Andrew said, after this process, know where the students will go when they go. We will have certainty, and from conversations with people before in attendance areas, they would like to have certainty as to where they will be going. And we have heard from others who want to go earlier than the date. And we had that question come up from grade 8 parents about, can they start earlier instead of going there? We haven't answered that one because we need to complete the process as to where the boundaries will be.
What plans for students that are starting in grade 12 in the year 2016?
So they
attending current schools.
And moving?
Well, that's the question.
They would be moving.
They would be moving. So they're finally leaving all the friends behind.
Well, if they're going in the same location as maybe their friends are in the same geography, they would move. Yeah.
And if they're not,
Then they would move to the new school. And I mean, we do, in the city of Barrie, it's been open as far as out of area transfers, for example. That's taken place a lot. Barrie Central, the population is 750. I think the numbers at the beginning of the year, 160 of them were from the other schools outside of the extended French group. So that's a bit of a give and take between all of our schools in the city of Barrie. So it may be a situation where without transportation being provided, and that's what we do when we bring out of areas, we don't guarantee of transportation seats, then they may apply for out of area to go with their friend.
so what happens to the students that were forced to go to school or attend a catchment area if the new school is not really planned? What happens to them for those grade 12?
Grade 12s are not going to the new school. One of the key things, and that was a question that came up with the French students, was why not move the French program over there? Because if we take only 100 students total between grade, or 160 students in the French program to a new school, the cohort of grade 12s may be 30. We can't guarantee programming for them. So that's why we're saying if we move the extended French students into Innisdale, then they would be able to get their full program. So you don't want to take out a group that's going to graduate or already have chosen their pathway, and that's why we like the idea of 9s and 10s starting at the new school and then growing, because then we're not interrupting a pathway. And when we talk about pathways, people who are involved in schools know 9 and 10, we offer academic applied, locally developed, and a number of options. The number of options into the senior grades explode, because that's where you get the diversification, whether it's instead of just science in grade 10, you got physics, chemistry, biology, environmental science, other ones, they expand a lot more. That's what part of the program is in secondary school. And that's why when we do these accommodation reviews, we try to make sure that we end up, as Andrew pointed out, the schools are the right size to be able to offer a full range of program no matter what. One of the key things, Barrie Central went through the ARC, but it was a facility condition in the center, but it's also the availability of program. And when we get to a certain size, we have a hard time creating program. Our secondary schools, Penetang is slated to close at the same time. It's about 400. Its plan is to move in with Midland to make a school of 1,000. That's a better size program. We have 2 other very small schools, Elmville and Stanton. We have other towns that have the plan to try to address it.
So in Barrie, 12 moving around.
12s would move to their new school.
In the case of Barrie Central, because that school,
What was the other school?
with
The other schools, nobody else.
any grade 11 through 12 living in this area would remain at Innisdale until
Is that what you're saying? So what
only
happens?
the grade 9 to 10 is from this area when they start.
So what happens to the students who are currently getting, will be heading to 12 in 2016, and currently get bused to Innisdale?
They would continue.
So the buses will still continue to run, even though the rest of the students who normally get on the buses will be in the school.
We call it grandfather and grandfather.
So that's the plan.
Yeah.
That's what we need to know. Thank you.
Well, I think we'll get more questions. I'll go over this.
I'm really not understanding the lack of a contingency plan with respect to the school not being ready for September 16th.
Right.
And that's where I'm having the greatest difficulties as a business person. I'm in similar situations living a fairly large business, and we have a contingency plan because we need some space. We don't get to move into the new building, right? And I've read a study with respect to the boilers at Central and sort of the options that were reviewed, and the plan that if the boilers stopped working, that it would be potentially a double school here at North, or however long it would take to repair boilers. And in that study, it seemed to me to indicate there were no other options. And so I'm wondering, is that the contingency plan, you think, if the South End School is built?
At this point, no. What we've presented so far is that we would have, and the contingency plan you refer to about Barrie Central is because of a plant failure.
Right.
So that's and we've tried to say that, is that people say keep Barrie Central open. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be able to keep it open, because it may fail and we may have to be out of there anyway. And that's what we've been saying. That's what's precipitated the ARC. As far as an option going forward for those students, what we presented is to have combined population of Innisdale and the section of Barrie Central moving that way would all be at Innisdale. So is there another option? Yes, there are other options that could come up to mind. We haven't gotten to that point. When we know we aren't going to be in the new school, that's when we'll certainly make sure that we're going to be able to do that. Other schools and boards do this. It's not unusual in the province. It's unusual for us. But it's also one where we want to make sure that people are moving once. So the students, and I understand if you, and we had this concern with the Warnica group, if the grade 3s were moving to grade 4 at Buffalo Ridge and then they move back to Warnica, there could be 2 moves. I understand that. But in this case, we would be moving students once so that they're going to their new school. And they aren't going to, that group will not move again. So if a student moves from Letitia Heights area of Barrie goes to Barrie North, they are not going to be impacted again. They'll stay there. So if I can get back to one of the questions about the construction here, the population here can be accommodated. It can be accommodated. What we've asked for is additional pupil places to ensure that we've got enough spaces. We had 1,300 students here a number of years ago. We had 1,300 students here in a multiple lunch situation, and because of utilization of the classes by the principal, when they set it up, they went back to a single lunch, which is preferred. And that's how you can accommodate more students in a bigger school over time. had a mandate a number of years ago when I started the job, that every school would be on multiple lunch to use all the spaces. That's not the preferred for the culture of the school, but it certainly is for utilization. So we are keeping an eye on that. We will be trying to present more options. If we're up against it. If we're not up against it, we'll continue along. Yes.
So if the new school is open in 2016 and all the children from Central go to Innisdale, but then the grandfather in grade 11 and 12, they won't go to the new school. So what numbers will that give you at Innisdale in 2016?
So I'll approximate, maybe Andrew can pull it up, but if we're transferring 400 students to Innisdale, which is now about 1,600, there'd be 2,000. If the school is open and we're transferring 400 out, Innisdale would go back to 1,600. Now, the natural attrition, because those extra 11s and 12s are there, would move out in 2 years. And we hope that Innisdale would settle around 1,200, which is just almost right where it's on the ground capacity.
But you're still, for another 3 years, you're still going to be really overcrowded in Innisdale.
For 2 years?
Yeah, for 2 years, but they've been really overcrowded for quite a few years already. So that's another 2 years they're going to have to deal with all the portables and the overcrowding.
Well, it won't be as many portables as it would be with 2,000 students, but it will be. But that way we are not disrupting those students who are in 11 and 12, wherever they're coming from their pathway, because then they're able to know the courses that are available. And Innisdale has unique courses of its own, just like Barrie Central or Barrie North does. So we're trying to accommodate that. And it is a growth process. But that school in the south, as you can see from the numbers, we already have the students that will fill that school within a few years. Our disappointment with the ministry is not that we have a school in the south and then we're working through the timelines, is that they didn't give us enough space. Because once the Hewitt subdivision or secondary plan kicks off, we're going to have even more students to fill that school. And that's the challenge we face, planning and staying ahead. And we work closely with the county planners and the city planners wherever we are. But we also, sometimes subdivisions come in, and if the margin's right, more homes open than others. Heard about some others in the county that are doing that. Sometimes that just jumps ahead. So it will be a process to accommodate.
That's really evident at the elementary level. We see it all the time. They don't fund us ahead of time. We have had schools like Maple that were 1,000 kids before we received funding for another school. In Alcona, the same thing. We just received funding for an additional school there. That's how we received the funding. It's a frustration because that's the reality.
For bringing more kids into that situation, how are they supposed to, access guidance counseling, access classrooms, access computer, access the library? Like, that's already an issue, and adding more kids into that so that there really isn't getting the best quality of education now. So I don't understand how adding more kids into that formula is going to work.
So our plan is not to add more kids, it was different kids. Our plan is to have 400 come in and 400 different ones go to the other locations. If the new school is open. If it's not ready, then that is what we have mapped as one contingency right now. That is the one that we've been working towards. Simply, the question came, what are you going to do if the new school's not ready? Well, we have had schools, and Innisdale's held that population before. Bear Creek has held that population before. We understand.
What population is that, 2,000?
Yes.
Oh, really?
In excess, actually.
How do you do that, though? I don't understand.
The effects of the kids on them in that sort of population is huge. They're already, even if you're staying status quo, there's already an issue there.
Yeah, just because we did it doesn't mean it's right.
Doesn't mean that
We're
it's
not
right.
saying that, but what you asked,
Okay.
no, what was asked was, what is our plan right now? And that's what, if we don't have another option, then that is what would take place. The question was asked, what will you do if it's not ready? That's what we're saying right now. I saw somewhere that somebody said 20-25 portables at North. That was never brought up. That was never brought up. But the fact is we have 7 portables here at North. They're not all utilized right now. We would add more portables here. Innisdale is going to be the one that has the accommodation situation right now because of its size. If the school isn't ready, then that's where we would say we would add more. It has had it before. I'm not saying that's why
So
we would do it again.
What studies are being done on the impact of the overcrowding in the schools and the actual effect that it's having on our kids?
There are any studies being done right now.
There aren't any? No.
So do you not think that's an important thing to look at, what the effects of the overcrowding is on our kids right now? And how that's going to affect them in the future and their education? I mean, it astounds me that a school board whose sole purpose it is to educate our children isn't even looking at the effects of overcrowding in our school system.
Well, our overcrowding, to be honest, is located in one school right now. You could argue that Banting is overcrowded. You could argue about a number of small elementary schools that have got crowding issues. And that's why we have a capital plan. And that's why we ask for the dollars for the new school to balance the population.
I guess for me it's a credibility issue as well, right? Because this isn't our first rodeo, right? So we've closed King Edward. We have kids in our community, but this is their third school closing. So they got closed King Edward because it was prohibitive to repair, but apparently not, because there's another school in there operating fine. Then they got, went to Prince of Wales because there was some really great programming and some partnering with Central. Then that school got closed, and now they're at Central, and then that school's getting closed. So the whole, ARC thing and being able to provide some input sort of kind of sounds like lip service 3 times through, where we're actually being pushed in a direction that the board seems to want to go regardless of what. It just seems like the same chip when the decisions have already been made, I guess. So I'm trying to figure out what is different this time and what is the actual, outcomes going to be and who's measuring that when it comes to the overcrowding. Like, nothing's happening. Nobody's looking at what the outcomes are currently in an overcrowded school. And there's going to be more kids. That school's not going to be ready in 2016. And everybody knows that, and it's just a stubbornness that nobody is actually acquiescing to the fact that that's actually going to happen. So there is going to be more kids put at Innisdale than what it is right now. Are we the only ones as parents and communities see that? Like this?
Well, wouldn't it be a better contingency plan to keep Central open until?
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of going off and rambling because I'm just so frustrated. But I guess my concern is that you're not looking, or the board isn't looking at what the effects are on the kids when they can't access school libraries and computers and teachers and guidance counselors is a huge one. I had to actually make an appointment myself to go see a guidance counselor and raise bloody hell at Innisdale to get an appointment to go and see somebody. So there's already issues there, and nobody seems to be taking that seriously or actually looking at it and finding out what the effects are before we shovel more kids in. So I'm not sure why that's. Can you explain to me why not?
Explain to you why there aren't any studies, or? Well,
I guess why you're not looking at how this is going to affect the children and how it's affecting the kids now and how it's going to be affecting them in the future by having these overcrowded schools and not being able to access classrooms and services.
Well, that's the challenge with accommodation, and as we've said, we try to keep up with the demand of the accommodation. In this case, the south end of Barrie is growing, and that's what our one south end school right now on the east side is in Innisdale. So we do it by geography.
We close the feeder schools, so the downtown. So we're closing all the feeder schools to the main high school downtown. So who's going to move downtown with their family when there's no schools to put kids in? Exactly. So that's why you're getting this urban sprawl, I guess. I don't know, I'm not a city planner, but I mean, it's hard to move into a downtown core or a downtown area where there's no schools.
And that is the City of Barrie's issue. If you close all of the schools in the downtown core, no one is going to move into that area. And the City of Barrie planners have told you that over and over and over and over again, and you don't give a damn.
I disagree
that's
with you
what
on
it feels
that,
like.
but that's your opinion. You're entitled to it.
That's the City of Barrie's opinion.
The schools that have closed either because of the 3 things that we are always concerned about and are mandated: facility condition, program, and enrollment.
Facility condition at King Edward is fine. Facility condition at King Edward is fine.
We're not here to discuss that issue. We're happy to talk to you outside. Yeah.
Just a question. Is there a school climate survey to address some of these?
Yes, there is, but we're not allowed to see it.
I know there is an elementary, so that would be an opportunity for parents to express that when we type of concern. That would be a platform in which to address that.
We're not allowed to see the results of that. Your words.
Sorry? You share the results at school council? Okay.
But not the public?
School council is the council.
So in 2016, when the new school does not open, because everyone in this room knows it's not going to open, there's going to be over 2,000 students at Innisdale. The City of Barrie planners that we have spoken to, and we have written letters from them.
Can't hear you.
The City of Barrie planners that we have spoken to have stated that the minute Innisdale hits 1,700 students, you have to add more bathrooms. So there's going to be more than 300 extra students. What is your contingency plan to add more bathrooms at Innisdale?
We'll be working with the city on that. That's not the information that we got from the city as far as washroom capacity.
What did you receive then from the city?
The current capacity is 1,700.
Yes.
That's based on a building permit application from 1998.
Yeah.
And that, not that it was arbitrary, but at that time it was said that that would be a sufficient number. Our calculations are now, not to get into the exact numbers, but we have a certain number of fixtures that in consultation with the city, we have washrooms capacity.
If you remember the last AAR meeting, I said I would like to go and count them, and he said, no, you're not going to step foot on that property because unless you have an escort. I said, okay, fine. I went down to the city and asked the city, what's the magic number? And they said, okay, well, we'll have to go and investigate that. So they did it. You know that. You know that they did that. They went to the school. The magic number is 1,700. You go over 1,700 students, you know, with new portables, you're not going to get a building permit to put another portable on that property. And that's from the city themselves. So how do you account for that?
We will work with the building department, our maintenance and construction department.
These have to be permanent washrooms, not portable toilets.
No,
okay?
what I was saying is there is enough fixtures there. The formula was done in 1998, and it was done to meet a specific number at that time. There is, based on the current calculations,
But it's still applicable today, though. The building code hasn't changed.
The magic number is
The magic
1,700.
code does change.
Sure it does, but it hasn't since then.
The magic number is 1,700. When you get
Thank you, thank you.
when you get to 1,701, we are going to be standing at the door, and the City of Barrie is going to be standing there with us because we have their support.
They'll be working with the City of Barrie all the way along. They are our partners. They do work with us on the question of egress and others as well. So that's the process that we work through. We don't break any regulations or building codes. We work with them. But you do have to have permission to put portables on. That is a change in the building process in the last dozen years.
How did you get 2,000 students in Innisdale?
Going over here.
No, I want to know, how did you get 2,000 students in Innisdale in the past? You said that before.
We work with the City of Barrie.
How did you do it, though? How did you get past the building codes? What year was that?
I don't have the year.
Mr. Danish, you could probably eliminate a lot of these questions about where kids are going and overcrowding by just guaranteeing the students at Central that their school won't close until the new school is open, the addition in North is ready. We've done it for Prince of Wales. It was a smooth transition. I was so happy with it as a parent that gone through King Edward and then Prince of Wales. One to the other was like black and white. The schools were ready, the classrooms were ready, kids were excited about the move. If you move kids before there's a new addition and there's a new school, it's going to be like another King Edward, only you're going to have 1,000 kids and not 200. And 2,000 parents all angry. You know, you have a contingency plan. Why can't a contingency plan just be to leave Central open until there's classrooms ready for the kids? You've closed your school. You've refused to accept a partnership offer. You've refused to give the information to the public about it. At the very least, you could guarantee.
I have to disagree on two things because, one, you're giving me way too much power and saying, why don't I guarantee? That's not my decision.
Where it is.
But that's not my decision. That's the Board of Trustees that give us where we go. And as far as the other elements, we certainly don't have a situation that we and say definitively that we're at. As I said, we get to the point where you know the new school isn't going to be ready, we'll say that, but that will be a process to get to that. We aren't there.
Why can't you give us that guarantee now? And if the school
I can't give you a guarantee,
the trustees can?
but the trustees are 4 of 12 that are here tonight. This is the same idea that happens in a lot of meetings, which is great. Public participation is wonderful, but we don't make decisions here. We make decisions at the board table, or the trustees do.
So your contingency plan and your where students are going to go if the new school isn't built in time, or if it is, but that's your plan, right? That wasn't the trustees that put that together, right?
The contingency plan for the failure of the central boiler, that was a collaborative effort amongst a lot of different people. My name is against it because I'm the superintendent of facility services, but it certainly is one that everybody works on.
So it's the trustees that can guarantee the students at Central that they wouldn't move to their school.
The ARC decisions were made. Those are the ones we're following right now, as Andrew referenced. Those decisions are the ones we're acting on. When the partnership did not take place, and I disagree with you on that because we didn't refuse it, that it has to meet a certain standard. When the standard is out there and it's not met, then it's not met. But when that takes place, that's when the other motions, the other decisions start to come in. As we said, capital business case, attendance area review. We didn't start those a year and a half ago. We started those after the partnership did not succeed.
Who's the engineer at the board right now, John? You have an engineer there?
Mark Tradorsky is the manager of maintenance and environmental services.
He would know
is a PN.
Yeah, he would know all the building codes and everything. Has he told you all about all of this? Or?
We work together, whether it's design and construction with Steve Parker, Andrew's department, Mark Tradorsky's department, we work together.
What I'm saying is the engineer should be consulting with you when it comes to all these things.
Yeah. He does, professional. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming out tonight. We will be around for questions after.